Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all you have given us, Lord. Thank you for the many blessings that you blessed us with that we don't need, but that you have so graciously given us. Thank you for the wonderful, cool weather and for a safe and fun-filled Thanksgiving. And Lord, I pray over all of our staff, this board, with every decision that we make and putting our children first, and that we have a successful next few weeks before Christmas break. And Lord, I pray for a hedge of protection over our whole school district. And dear Lord, I pray, amen. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I call to order the meeting for our workshop meeting for December 2nd. And before I hand it over to you, Mr. Vosky, I just wanted to talk and address the board really quick with my thoughts and viewpoint moving forward. Maybe the start of January with board consensus. I would like that, unless we have a special guest in the room for a presentation, I would like that we do board discussion items first. Again, with your all's consensus, so that if there's stuff that we as a board want to discuss, that we want to bring forward, that we want to talk about, that we want to see carried out, I would like to discuss it first and then move on to our superintendent and the district and the agenda review. So if all of you are okay with that, starting January, I would like to do it that way.
So you refer to it more like new business rather than comments at the end?
Correct. We'll still have comments at the end, but like, for example, the discussion for board meeting process, we would do that first. Anything that you would like to bring forward, we would discuss it. That way we have, I know some board members felt rushed, some board members felt overwhelmed, wanting to have the time. So I think that would be effective and efficient if we do it that way. And then, again, I want to be very mindful of people's time. So if it's an outside presenter, like we would do normally, we would change up the process and allow them to present first. But I would like that the board have their time to discuss before we do any other presentations or agenda items. If all of you agree to that, I would like to start that January. So, Ms. Hanson, can I get consensus?
No, I think it's a great idea. My times over the last 2 years are things that I did some research into something like this, and I just never thought about moving it to the beginning, but Baker County school board members actually do PowerPoint presentations. Then everybody doesn't have to always research every single thing. Like if Ms. Gilhausen had an interest in something in particular, that would be a great time for her to share that information with the board, since we really don't have any other opportunity other than that one workshop because of sunshine laws, which are very stringent in Florida. So I actually think it's a really good idea. It doesn't mean we will always have something, but I guess when we go into this policy making that we're about to do through the Neola system, that would actually then, what if a school board member had a special interest in something from the Neola policy that they wanted to share about a policy with the board? Would it happen then, or would it happen in that board discussion section, and then the district would follow on with whatever follow-up? And then I guess my last question would be this, then let's say I was doing a presentation on something important to me, then if the people in the room would still be able to answer those questions during that time? During discussion, if we had questions from somebody?
That would be the idea in theory, is that if you wanted to bring something forward to the board, at that time, we have all heads of departments in here that we could address it then. because it's probably gonna be different than what's on the agenda, or if it aligns with what, Mr. Rossi's, having presented, then we could talk about that, but if
Okay.
not, then, yeah, that would be my idea.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
So, I would just say if you as a board member want to present something and want to be able to ask questions of staff, just make sure you get your presentation and information to them ahead of time so that they're ready with the
3 days,
answers that you
that'd
may
be
have.
efficient, 3 days. I'm being serious about this, like, cause before
many-
we
how
move
many
on,
days
I wanna
ahead
get
of time?
consensus, and then I wanna get, hey, this is what I wanna present, and this is the time frame that I wanna get it. So if, I want to make sure that we agree on a time, and that we agree to do this, so,
On the time for,
timeframes, like, do you want it the day before, is
well,
it day
I
before?
don't need the information, so I would
I
say,
think it's staff that's gonna answer the question that you have, we need time to do that, and just like the board has pointed out to me in particular, the more time the better in order to have that prepared for whatever the discussion is. I would hope that there would also be conversation between the board member and the superintendent related to the topic at hand. Right, one of the biggest issues is when there is no discussion ahead of time. We can certainly prepare if we knew what the topic was gonna be. But waiting to the last second for a surprise is not appreciated, not professional, just to be honest.
So, I have an appreciation for not being prepared for a PowerPoint or a presentation by the district, because I personally have asked to have information 1 week in advance, or at least attached on that Thursday, so I think if we follow the same rule we have been following, it would need to be on the discussion agenda portion, right? It would say like Ms. Hanson wants to whatever present or talk about. So any one of us would have to be in early enough to add it to the agenda, right, to begin with. And then, as for the presentation itself, I mean, are we going to, sometimes we can, if it's something, I mean, I don't know the rule even now. Sometimes things are attached to our agenda the Thursday before, sometimes they're not. So I think this is an area that we need to discuss about when everyone, so that all parties are actively involved and able to get their thoughts together before someone does a presentation.
Right, so let's get consensus on moving forward with moving this. Mr. Alvaro, what are your
I
thoughts?
agree, I think it's a good idea, but we should give him time to prepare the response, that's that.
And you're okay with flipping it to the board discuss ahead of time? Ms. Clark?
I totally agree, we ought to be able to address new business earlier, but we need to give the same amount of time that we're given, so there are no surprises. And it's all up front, and everybody has a chance to review and go through it all.
Ms. Gilhousen?
I agree. Would you put it under workshop items and it would just be the board's, whatever board member's workshop item would be first on that?
Right, just like how we do it now. And then let's just say, you wanted to talk about, I don't know, reading. This is just an example. And you had a presentation, I won't always, I loathe PowerPoint, so I will not have a PowerPoint ever. I will just bring in information to you and present it. And like I did before, well, not the first time, but in previous times, I've sent over to either Mr. Walker or Miss Honora to have it sent to all of you ahead of time as well, so that you have it to read and you know the direction that I'm thinking or moving. And as a new board member, nobody told me this, so I'm just saying this not to point it out or call you out or anything, but if there's something you do want to bring forward, bring the material, and I would encourage or just suggest that you do it that way. That way, it's not the first time the board member's seeing it, because some of us like to, I don't want to say gut it and look over it and see what other districts are doing, but we like to be prepared ahead of time to know the direction and where everybody's at. So I just
Ms.
encourage
Skipper?
that so that you're not lost when, yes ma'am?
Can I also say that sometimes, as in real conversation in most businesses across the world, sometimes we can just talk to each other. Sometimes there is a need for board members to figure out where our temperature is with each other on a topic before making heavy decisions. It doesn't always need, and I don't mean this in a bad way, district intervention into a conversation that we're having. I know during the media policy, there was a lot of intervention into our conversations. Sometimes it can just be okay for board members to have a discussion on a topic. And I just want people to understand that there always doesn't need to be, if one side disagrees with the other, there doesn't always need to be that I need to hurry up and say something because somebody said something or they don't know enough information. I think it's really important that in our only once a month workshop that board members sometimes just get a chance to talk to each other. Ms. Gilhouse has been on the board for a very long time. I have a great deal of respect for that. And I also would have a great deal of respect for allowing conversation to listen sometimes. Ms. Clark's been 4 years together. They have almost 20 years of experience, and very rarely have we been able to have a conversation just to talk to each other. And I don't think anybody here is afraid to talk to each other. I think just our opportunity sometimes gets lost when there's interruption sometimes, so.
Well, my plan is, I'm more of a, I don't wanna say OCD, but I'm more of a, direct person. So, my intent is to allow board discussion, every board member speak, and then we will, ask for the superintendent's opinion and district staff's opinion. But my goal is to have every board member have their discussion and their say before any interruptions moving forward. So that's just me personally. I hope we can all agree on that. But I think following Robert's rules is going to benefit all of us, everyone. So if that's board consensus that we do that, and that if we do decide to give a presentation or information, that we do it the way that we have asked the superintendent to do it, 3 days. I think that would be, or sooner, if you have it sooner, if you've already got your PowerPoint together or whatever, you've got information together that you present it sooner. And then you can have those discussions with Mr. Broski as well prior to the meeting. And I think
So the one thing, I'm still very confused about this. Recently there was some discussion about when items would be attached to the agenda. Ms. Clark and I, probably more than a dozen times over the last 2 years, have asked to have items earlier. That seems to be a lot for the district to get items to us by the day of our Thursday before when we get our agenda. I would say we all follow the same rules. If it's something we're voting on, it needs to be attached that Thursday. I will tell you that if we're voting on an allocation packet, I'd really like to see it on that Thursday, because there's no way I can personally figure out, as just one board member, questions I'd like to ask. There are valid reasons the superintendent makes changes, but sometimes I would like to know those valid reasons, and that's very difficult to do when you get something last minute. So what I'm trying to do is to narrow down that window. I think Ms. Gilhausen brought up eventually first was, I believe if it's something we're going to vote on, it needs to be attached in its entirety, and that would be for a board member too. Even if you wanted to have a discussion, if there's something you're attaching for that discussion, it needs to be on there that Thursday, and that gives everybody the opportunity to review it and think about what they want to say or questions they may have by that Tuesday. So 2 of those days, if we attach it on Thursday, 2 of those days are a weekend day. Nobody's expecting anybody to work on the weekend. That only gives people Friday and Monday if they didn't open up the document, because our meetings are held on Tuesday. So can we come to a consensus, if there's something we're voting on, that it be attached that Thursday? That's the thing I've been having a lot of trouble with.
we can come to a consensus on that. Mr. Alvaro, how do you feel about that?
I agree with it, I'm good. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, that's clear.
Let me hold up on that for a minute. I mean, I think the nice part is we can start at the beginning with the plan, and we can change it as we go, we can tweak it as we go along, because we're gonna have variations to what we're doing, but, you know, we're back to the more time we have. But I think we're just generally talking about new business and getting it on the agenda too. It's not necessarily always something that we're gonna act on, so.
I think Mrs. Hanson is just referring to the thing that we vote on. Do we want a consensus that if we're voting on, that it's there by Thursday? If it's an action item that we're gonna vote on for the next board meeting, that all the attachments are there. So if it's a contract for a new program, that when you go to click on it, that the contract is there in its entirety, because we're voting on it next month.
Yeah, because now you're talking about basically adding things to the agenda. That's all we're doing. So it would be part of the normal routine. That's no different. So it would have to follow the same suit.
Yeah, so if we're all following it, when I open the agenda, if you were to talk about something and you had a PowerPoint in there or whatever, it's just there. There's an attachment. When you go through the agenda right now, sometimes there's an attachment, sometimes they're not. It was, has been stated that when we vote on something, the attachment's always there, but I went back through the 6 months and that's actually not. I just think if we're gonna talk about something on a Tuesday, and it would be our responsibility as well to prepare the documents early enough to be attached by Thursday, which means I would have to turn it in earlier than Thursday because Ms. Honora would be the one that would attach the document. So I just feel like Thursday, it's not a week ahead of time. I know sometimes we've talked about a week ahead of time, Ms. Clark and I, but if everybody's following the same rule, then I'm very comfortable with that. Just having the attachments on when the agenda's released would be a big help when the big items come up.
The action items, correct? The voted items
Yeah,
that they
because
are
that's no
attached.
different than
Okay.
what.
The skill housing honey.
what we're doing.
That's fine.
So, Mr. Broski, can we make sure that if we are voting on an item, that everything is attached by that Thursday?
We can, but I would call to the board's attention that sometimes it's impossible to do that. We have one item, like for example today, in which it's going back in contract review, back and forth with the other organization that we're dealing with. And so sometimes it's not attached. I can tell you that typically most government entities have all of their items on the attached 1 week prior to the time that the board votes. And so we can certainly do that, move forward towards that, but understand in addition, for special actions related to employee discipline, they typically will come in within the 48-hour rule for that. So as a general consensus, yes, that's what we're gonna do. Will every contract be on there? Not every one, because I can tell you there's one right now that we're going back and forth on in an attempt to get resolved prior to that. But then it gets placed as soon as it does.
Okay, so could you send out an email, Ms. Honora, that if it's attached, when it's attached, so board members are able to view it right then? Would that be okay?
We can certainly do something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Many districts, when they do attachments, the board knows, they absolutely know there may be changes to those attachments and they're not in the final copy. We've
Right.
actually talked about that before. You can have an attachment and us knowing that certain things could change by that following Tuesday. But the habit of getting what we will be discussing into the agenda is more important than the absolute last change that you may need to make. I mean, I understand it's a big business operating on every single thing being done, but most board members who use this system know that there could be some changes to that, especially in the two areas you talked about, so.
And the board member could be reviewing each day those items.
So, if we all have consensus on that, and then, anything else you wanna add to that? I know we're not gonna start the new way we do it till January, but I just wanted to make sure nobody else, no other thoughts on that actual video. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Rossi.
Okay, why don't we just start right from there, since we could start that. There was one discussion item on this agenda, which had to do with public comment and the process involved. Ms. Clark had brought this to attention, so I would turn it over to Ms. Clark then to lead the discussion.
Well, I think that I have viewed other districts, and I think when it comes to our general comments, we've already tried to adjust that a little from the agenda items. But I think that it would be something we could try for a while, to put the general comments at the very end. That way, we can converse with the public, we can turn off the cameras, we can allow staff to go home, those that want to. But the agenda items, of course, comments would be very important, so they'd remain. I'm just talking about the general comments. Talk about moving them to the very end.
So you wanna keep the, consent comments, the consent agenda comments, we'll keep those, but you're talking about just general.
Just general, that do
to
not
move to
relate
the
to
end.
anything on our agenda.
Did-
If we want 15 people to come and, or 15 people want to come and talk about one item, but we don't need to be tying up the staff. You know, we're still there, we're gonna listen and hopefully have the comment section as well.
I think the only hurdle to overcome with that would be, that we have to have minutes for it. So I think the video portion is part of how we meet that requirement, so would that.
I don't think the other counties do that though, so maybe we need to check with
I
our
just wanna say
attorney and
let's-
see what is required.
Okay.
But apparently, I know Pasco County is not doing that, for instance.
So, we've had this discussion before, I think, but when you move the general comments to the end, one, you're right about it, if you have a whole bunch of general comments about one thing that's not related to the agenda as a work item, then they move it to the end, so if 20 people wanted to talk about that one thing, it's at the end, and the rest of the folks who came to watch the business can get up, they briefly pause in other districts and before general comment to allow people to leave who came. And secondly, I have had this conversation with Mr. Blocker that many districts do turn off the camera at the end. It's not against the law to turn off the camera for general comment. And I specifically asked him that because when I watch other school boards and I write down the order they do things, I had a question about that. Now, I think at one time, because my files are running right now, Ms. Gilhousen, I think you were concerned about, do you have to gavel and end the regular meeting,
Right.
right?
Well, that's what I mean about the minutes, as long as we're in session, and, you know, the five of us are responding to public comment or discussing public comment, then we have to be in session, and when we're in session and we're conducting business, there has to be minutes, which, I mean, Ms. Honora takes care of those for us, but if you're talking about sending staff home, I don't know how you're gonna meet the minutes requirement.
Can we get legal opinion for this discussion real quick, so we know
Right.
where?
So, I mean, when you talked about doing minutes, I guess, are you asking if all staff would go home, or would be a portion of the staff that has,
Well,
Or any
those that
existing
would
com-
not need to stay, basically, but I guess we need to find out if the other counties are gaveling the end of the meeting, you know, I
Right.
wouldn't think minutes would be necessary, but is that,
So you're talking about
Correct.
closing the meeting before general? Oh,
Mhm.
well then we couldn't discuss, and at that point, that would be fine, it'd be like an informal town hall.
Yeah,
okay, so which way would we wanna handle it? Or what,
and that's completely up to the board on which way you'd wanna handle it. Either way is fine, but, you know, it depends on if there wants to be discussion or not, public meeting setting for the board still.
Do you guys wanna discuss public comment, or do you wanna just let the public state whatever they wanna state? And if that's the case, then we don't have to be, like, you can end the meeting and then we can just listen to whatever.
maybe that would be best, as we do now.
And, I think legal has advised us before, we're not required to listen to general comment. If you want to just have comment, public comment must be related to the agenda, you can do that.
I would cautious that, and I would personally disagree with that, just for the simple fact that, I feel like people should be able to come and speak their opinion, on any issue. I don't wanna take away their First Amendment right on that.
And I don't either.
No,
That's-
I know what I didn't take it that way, I just meant that if that is an idea that we run with, that we be very cautious on that, because
You may run into that argument anyway because you're ending the meeting, so you're not allowing them to participate in the meeting.
we don't typically give any comment after general comments, right, typically?
Typically we don't, but it has been,
Is there a reason that we don't?
well, when we talked about it before, I feel like I remember conversation where board members were frustrated with not being able to respond to public
Mhm.
comment. So if we're not in session, we can't respond. So that, I mean, you're limiting yourself that way.
Because there might be an opportunity, like Ms. Gilhausen has said, I know that there has been conversation that we have wanted to respond, and we've been frustrated because we can't respond, or we thought we couldn't respond, or whatever the
Well, that's
case
part
may
of it,
be.
yeah.
So I don't want also to take away that opportunity from you as a board member to be able to express your thoughts and yourself during those comments, if you do decide you want to speak back.
But I think if we're off camera at that point and we do want to comment, that gives us time to research and come back at the next meeting, and then we can discuss whatever the issue was.
Yes, you can do that. I mean, you can do that too, but I'm just thinking about those who would possibly want to comment ever, not saying they would, I'm just saying if we are not taking minutes, then you lose that opportunity. I mean, that's fine if you want to turn the camera off and we continue our minutes so that we can still have discussion. So I guess that's what we need to figure out. Which way do you guys want to do it? Do you want to not be able to say anything, or do you want to still have that freedom to?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we end the meeting, turn off the cameras, let them speak. If we want to then comment at the next meeting about something that came up that needs attention, then we can certainly do so. But that would be the way I would want to handle it.
I think that's wise. I think that gives time for everybody to talk to the right folks that need to be included in that conversation, and sometimes things can be handled. Because a lot of times we get people who come up who've got an issue with a bus or something with a teacher or a situation at school, and Mr. Brodsky will usually put them in touch with a staff member, he'll handle it himself. And I think that's a way to protect the privacy of the children involved, and I think that's reasonable.
Well, I know I personally responded during the media book crisis we were having. I personally did respond in our defense several times, because that was the right place and the right time to respond, to make sure that people knew we had done more than other districts probably in the entire nation. And on the superintendent's behalf, sometimes he does respond to blatant misconceptions in his superintendent comments. So if we moved it to the end, that would also take from his correction of, I just thought of this, because oftentimes the superintendent does address some of the things that have been said, so.
I'm fine, whatever you guys want to do. Personally prefer it be like we have it now, just for the reason that it gives everybody the opportunity to discuss and move on. And we end our meeting with board comments, so it gives you the opportunity to.
Can you
close out
adjust the
meeting.
agenda? I don't know, I've never been, so for instance, if you get 30 cards that say these 30 people want to talk about this item, can you adjust the agenda? And I'm only asking because I really don't know, to move an item to the end?
With board consensus, you can.
We've done that before, yes.
You mean at the very end of the meeting after board
Well,
comments?
like if you did get 22 general comments on
But
whatever.
I
'Cause
will
we already-
caution you,
Have it at that.
if that many people show up to speak about something, they're usually not happy, right? So if you then treat them differently than every time you've treated public comment in the past, you're setting yourself up for a difficult situation.
Well, man, then I guess it's if you wanted to keep it the same order, many districts reduce from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. So that it wouldn't be an hour and a half with the same thing, it would be an hour. We have had probably a handful of times where it wasn't negative either, it's just a bunch of people talking about something they were passionate about.
But again, you can't treat one speaker different than you treat another speaker. That's where you get into some really, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where you get into some legal issues, is when you start, well, you wanna talk about this and so does this person, so you only get 2 minutes. But you wanna talk about something different, so you can have 3. Like, then you're not applying the rule the same way to everybody, and people can then accuse you of discrimination.
And we already do that, though, we do move all the general comments to a different time.
But we give them the same amount of time.
Yeah. So I don't know, there's positives and negatives to both, so.
I just thought we could try it for a little bit and see.
Mr. Alvaro, what are your thoughts?
I think we should give everybody the same amount of time, not restricting time to somebody, giving more time to another person. And also giving, I would agree to keep it the way it is.
You wanna keep it the way, is that what?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. The way that we
we-
have it now? Okay, so that's, I personally, I don't wanna lower time. I'm very big on people being able to express themselves, good and bad. And I also believe that, we as board members should be able to respond. So I don't, not saying that we would, but I don't wanna take that away from us as board members. If there is something that maybe we're passionate about, or maybe that is absolutely inaccurate, or, you know, whatever the case may be, us being elected officials, and we represent the people not only in our district, but this county, sometimes they are expecting us to speak up and to say things. And I don't wanna put us in a box. So, I'm indifferent on how we do it, whether we leave it the same or we turn the camera off, but I do not want to take away the opportunity for us as board members to be able to respond if need be.
Should we think about it?
Well, I think we all understand that our position as elected officials and listening to the citizens, absolutely. But I think we're not eliminating, right now, we're commenting at the very end, and most of those people have left. Many of those people have left after they've gotten up and spoken, and they don't even get to hear our comments. So I think if we turn off the cameras, listen, however long, however many, and then we can prepare and come back at the next, whether it's the workshop or the next school board meeting, and comment on those things that need to be commented on, then they're getting a chance to hear us. And hopefully, you know, it's during the meeting.
Do we know the legalities of what people, when they shut the cameras off, that's all I know, is they move the general comments and shut the cameras off. Do we know what they're doing during that time? Are they having discussion? Do board members talk to people?
There's no video unless you went to their meeting, you wouldn't know. Which you may get some public complaint about that. But it would be, I mean, when you consider our board meetings, it's usually the same people who attend. So I don't know how much pushback you really get, but I think maybe some middle ground might be to go ahead and move it to the end of the meeting and turn the cameras off, but stay in session, and that way we can respond if need be. And then if we want to eventually decide to not be in session down the road, we could make that call then, but maybe try the different order first.
Ms. Hanson, you're the only one that's kind of tinkering on
Never.
your thoughts on what you wanna do. Mr. Alvaro and Ms. Gilhousen are fine with leaving it the same, but then having the
Yep, I'm
option,
really,
but.
when we leave it the same, it gives the superintendent an opportunity. He knows a lot about the inner workings and goings on, so if someone were to say something completely inaccurate, he has an opportunity to respond on things I would never have responded on anyway. So you guys, I'm okay, I just wanna make sure that everyone has an opportunity to respond. That would include the superintendent. If we did it at the end, I don't know how that would work, or if someone gets up in a general comment right now and says something, can board members say, I wanna talk to this person, like, can we do that?
Yes,
You can, but I would, again, just be careful about that, because if you treat members of the public differently in public during a meeting, you may get into,
So we're saying if we don't, if I don't, this is just something I'm very confused on. Because it seems like if someone's making a general comment and we respond, that would be fine. Don't have to respond to every single general comment. It's just like if someone was directly talking about a policy I wrote and I wanted to respond to somebody, that's not preferential treatment, it's having a conversation.
right, no, I don't disagree with that, but I also think part of our board rule expectations that we put on the slide every meeting is that we won't address individual members, and we should not be addressed individually as board members, that we're addressed as a whole board. We don't allow the public to call out our employees by name, or, get up there and berate one board member, or berate the superintendent, and vice versa. We show the same respect by, we're not gonna call out an audience member.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Well, one of the challenges is that a parent comes forward and says something happened to their child at school, and we want to comment on that. There are legal implications to that, because we're dealing with potentially employee discipline related to that incident. The board at that time acts in a quasi-judicial fashion. So if the board is hearing information prior, in other words, you act as a pseudo judge in that. That's why, one of the reasons why we don't comment, or we try to lack comment. Sometimes it's just a Facebook rumor that, I try to dispel in superintendent's update portion of the meeting. But that's the reason why, because you guys will eventually hear a student discipline issue at a hearing, or you'll hear a teacher discipline issue at a hearing also. So a lot of times those volatile 3-minute comments are of that nature. That's why we don't respond typically to that.
I think that's understandable, and I know that there's sometimes, like you said, for example, the book policy, when you put so much time and effort into it, and you respond in a general form, general statement, that something's not accurate or whatever. Personally, I don't wanna give away that opportunity for board members. That's your right as a board member to be able to respond if need be, not every time, obviously. But, I just don't want to give away that right, so.
I think we're not giving it away, though, I think we're just moving it.
But, yeah, you're
Because
moving
right
it to
now
the
it's-
next meeting.
Right, but you've got the same scenario now where we don't comment until at the very end if we decide to comment on
But you
something.
you can comment. So like if somebody gets up and speaks, I can say, Madam Chair, I would like to say, you know
But I'm
what I
saying
mean?
it's no different than what we do now. We could change it, yes, but it's no different than what we're doing now, because we're not doing it directly after they speak, which is a good thing.
But we could, that's the point, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I don't wanna take that away, so if we do decide to do it right after someone speaks, you still have that opportunity. And you still have the opportunity in board comments to address them if need be as a whole. Whereas if you turn the cameras off and you send everybody home and we don't take, what is it? Minutes, you don't take minutes, then you don't have that opportunity. And sometimes things, I do believe, not always, but like with Mr. Broski addressing things, some things can be addressed then and there, and they not escalate to what could be. You know what I mean? Like they can be handled and fixed then. That's just my
Skipper, is there
theory
a
on
way
it.
that we could table it and I'm not a knower, yeah, table it, keep it the way things are right now, and give me an opportunity to find out what it is people do when they shut their cameras off, because I feel like I'm just missing out on the legalities and the procedures that they use might help me understand it better.
So why don't we do it for January's workshop? We'll bring this discussion back up, if that's okay with everybody else. And we can do additional research on it. We can talk to other districts, like Ms. Hanson said, to figure out
What they do.
what they actually do, making sure that it's legal, and then go from there.
If you
Yeah,
guys
it's just-
want to make a little change in the meantime, like I said, we could just do what Ms. Clark is asking by shutting the cameras off, moving it to the end of the meeting, shutting the cameras off, but everybody stays. Ms. Honora can keep our note, our minutes, so that that's done. We just don't have the video portion for general comment. And that way we're in session, if you wanna respond, you can, but it kinda takes away the platform a little bit.
I mean, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I'm fine with it, as long as it doesn't take away our opportunity as board members.
I think
So whether,
as long as we stay in session.
right, like I said, I'm indifferent on where you move it, but I just want the opportunity for us as board members to be able to address them or the superintendent.
How do you feel about that, Ms. Clark? Would that be,
No, I think that's acceptable.
so
And
stay in
we
session and
can-
turn the cameras off?
Yeah. There's so many different options,
There
and
are.
I was gonna suggest tabling it, but I like that idea. I mean,
And it's not hard and fast. I mean, it's an agenda, it can be changed.
yeah, and I think that's why the other counties are doing it that way.
So are you guys comfortable with that if we move it to the end of the meeting, but stay in session, turn the cameras off and keep minutes? Is that
Madam
okay?
Chair, can I say one quick thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Our staff would never leave, just for if that would help
We're gonna listen.
understand, like, whether we would leave or not leave. Our staff would never leave during a public
I
comment,
don't think so.
because we take those super seriously. So
We're all taking
whether the
notes.
camera's running or not, everyone's in the room until the board meeting is fully over and you all leave, so.
So just for clarity, just because if I'm getting this wrong, let me know. So for the December 12th meeting, we're gonna move public comment that's not an agenda item, just regular public comment, to the very end of the meeting. We're gonna turn the camera off when that section occurs, but we're still gavelled in, and the meeting hasn't ended until after that. That's what I heard, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Everybody good?
Yes,
Okay.
thanks for bringing that all together. Good
Well,
synopsis.
That was the options at the beginning,
I don't know about that.
stay gaveled
That's
in.
an
There was
early
three
Christmas
options.
gift, thank you, and thank you
And
for
to,
mentioning that staff would not leave, but at the same time, we know
Yes.
time is valuable and if you need to.
Thank you. And one of the things we said for this particular workshop was that we were going to have a briefer than normal workshop because people are traveling to Tampa for the conference and all that kind of stuff. So we have a very limited number of things on this particular agenda. One of those was an update on Apogee, which, to remind you, was the one that we had given a presentation you guys approved earlier on in the year.
All right, yes, I will be brief, just to give you guys a quick little update of where we are on Apogee. All right, so as a quick reminder of our timeline review, we had our board workshop on August 24th where Apogee was presented. We had Jen from Apogee come and present and do a demo as well. The board voted on September 5th for approval, so we have started building out the websites. We are here right now. Our goal is to launch the new websites in the app in January of 2025, which is 3 weeks away in our world with the holiday break. Train our staff in rooms in the summer of 2025, and then launch rooms for parents and guardians next year. And rooms is the two-way communication. So what we have done so far with our initial designs, this includes legal. I've worked with Mr. Steinmetz as well with our legal agreement for our trademark and our app naming in stores, because obviously we're working with a lot of branding when you talk 43 schools and our district logo. And so we have started tweaking the old design into the new design, which you do have also in your packet as well. So this is kind of like a beta site, so I can't bring it up live. And then that includes refreshing our digital presence for all of our school websites. So old design, we used Fleming Island Elementary, and we're also working with Fleming Island High School to have both elementary and secondary with their team at Apogee, and the new design. So something that's great is making sure that we're ADA compliant, we're making sure everything visually is fresh, everything is user-friendly for a parent, thinking like if I was a parent going to a website, what is the most important information I need right there on the homepage. So our next steps in timeline are immediate for December, what we will be working on in the next 3 weeks. Our communication cadre, which also includes Ethan's team for ITS, we have been working diligently weekly, multiple times weekly, with Apogee on meetings. Right now, they're doing the site migration. everything from our old site to our new site, and we have Linda and Sabrina really trying to help make sure that everything's kind of migrating that needs to migrate first. We are going to be training as a cadre on the back end of ThrillShare. We've done some training or alerts, which would be how to like send out the messages to the apps, both in English and Spanish, receiving those. But then we'll start our major training with them on the back end next week. The Superintendent Teacher Advisory Committee is going to provide stakeholder feedback this month. They're going to look at some of the beta sites to see kind of what they would say as a teacher, and a lot of those are parents as well on our committee looking at it. And then we're beginning the marketing to families and our staff as well through our Clay Connection starting this Friday about the change that's going to be coming. So when they log on to myonclay.net in January, it's going to look a little different, and that it's a new year and a new look for us. And to go ahead and start downloading the app. So we're going to market that starting this month. And then when we have our immediate needs for January, our tentative launch of flipping the switch would be January 6th, and I say that tentatively because we know we're working also around holiday schedules, and there's a lot of multiple people on the back end building this out. We're going to continue to market for parents and guardians to download the new app to stay connected with their main district and their child's school. We're doing a high-level introduction and training of Apogee websites in the app for our principals and assistant principals. That's going to occur on January 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And then we're going to plan for our staff admin pages and begin training separately with them. So our team will also work with Dr. Shepard's team and making sure that we are getting professional development. We'll be working on even ones that we record that we call backpacks, so people can log on and watch and do training at their own pace. So our spring timeline is going to be continuing to train staff on the usage of ThrillShare, which is the back end of Apogee. We're going to build the initial build out of rooms, which is the two-way communication. So that's when parents would be able to receive text messages back and forth. We're going to develop the best practice guideline, and we'll be working with Ms. Kidwell on that as well to make sure that we have some parameters, so we don't have people, sending out text messages at 9 p.m. at night. Get some office hours and just best practices of how to communicate with this platform. And then we're going to continue to refine the web pages as needed. Then we are going to have our summer summer training is going to happen as well this summer. So that will be making sure that the little section right here where people click over to rooms, and teachers will have that option on their desktop as well, that they know how to communicate and that they know how to use ThrillShare as well, because they'll be able to put classroom announcements in there, field trip information, all of that. So we'll make sure that is part of all of our teacher training. So I know it was high level, quick little 5 minutes, but I feel like we're just living in Apogee right now.
Any questions? Now, let me just say, have you ever tried to get 40,000 people to do something all at one time? This is a big thing. Like, so you'll hear about it, and somebody will no doubt say, I didn't know anything about it at some point in the whole process. So we're in the process. I think we have a good, deliberate, slow, introduced plan. Doing the website first, waiting to next year for rooms is a smart move to get everybody on board. Even with all of that, at some point that's going to happen, right? We all recognize that that's going to happen to us at some way in the process. The purpose was to streamline communication, so that means you can't add more stuff. You have to take other stuff away and use this as the primary source of communication. When that happens, some people don't like to give up their old stuff. And that'll be another challenge or hurdle. Because if you're just adding one more, you're really not streamlining. You just added one more, is all you did. So at some point, there'll be a pressure point related to that item, but that won't occur until the very end of the year, summertime, when that training occurs for folks when they come back to school for next year. Pretty big ticket item. The board, one of our strategic plan items was family and community engagement. This will certainly do that for us. Any questions on that one?
I just want to say we have done a really good job like this before, and when we all of a sudden there was pushback on this, but all of a sudden we put all their documents online, you remember?
Yep,
And everybody went in, you had a 98% success rate, so I think it's gonna be really good, and I think they're gonna appreciate this kind of a change, so.
sounds good. Then the last item was the agenda itself, so I'll quickly go through that, for the sake of time, and kind of hit on the ones that I think will be the ones that aren't just routine, that are more likely to have discussion. So, under discussion, there'll be some special actions that'll be added along the way as we get closer to the 48-hour rule. But you'll notice that there's 2 public hearings, and the public hearings deal with policy change related to educational and ancillary facilities. If you recall, one of the changes was a very simple change related to middle schools being 6 through 8, and that being added to the policy because of the changes that we're making at Oakleaf Junior and Lake Asbury Junior. The second is a public hearing related to the attendance boundaries for Oakleaf Junior High and Lake Asbury Junior High as a result of the rezoning of students in those 2 areas. So if you recall, we had board presentation and workshop. We've had 2 community meetings. The community meetings went fairly well. The community had the opportunity to come out and express what their concerns were related to that. Typically, people who show up for a meeting like that aren't showing up for a meeting because they have concerns. That's why they're showing up at the meeting. They generally don't show up if they're happy or not concerned related to the meeting. I would say, I know Ms. Clark and Ms. Hance were at the Oakleaf one. In fact, they were thanking us at the end. They realized that their 6th grader would have more opportunities.
Yes.
And so they viewed it as a very positive thing for the Oakleaf community. That doesn't surprise me, because they've had 6 through 8 there before.
Yep.
And they've had K through 8 there, so for them, that's pretty normal. Of the concerns that we've heard from parents throughout this whole process, which have been a few, but not an overwhelming number, was the idea of having a 6th grader on the same campus as a 7th and 8th grader. That seemed to be the primary concern. And 5th grade, kind of losing out on the celebratory nature of ending 6th grade at an elementary school. We're working on that process. I know there's a meeting coming up, I think it's this week, actually, related to how to make that 5th grade year special if they're going over to the junior high next year as a 6th grader. So I feel like it went very well. I know the operations team did a fantastic job. I appreciate the board members going to the meetings, and that's what that item is. Any question or comment on that? Okay, awesome. So then we're on to the normal stuff, which is minutes. The second item is controlled open enrollment. One of the things that you have to, by statute, do is every year you approve a controlled open enrollment plan. This upcoming, right now, open schools with very limited seating are Patterson, Montclair, Thunderbolt, FIE, SBJ, Lakeside Junior, and FIH for a limited number of seats through a process called controlled open enrollment. You can see that document there. Next is the proposed student calendar. We try to stay 3 years ahead, so this would be the 26-27 student calendar is loaded for your view.
And isn't that the first year with the busing change, time change?
Yep. So
I say busing because that's the biggest hurdle.
Yep. So a quick update on that topic, since it's been brought up, and I know board members are interested in this, is that during that year, the statute says that a middle school cannot start prior to 8 o'clock, and a high school cannot start prior to 8:30. That's the essential part of that. So given transportation and being able to transport students to school, really then it becomes a challenge as to how to do that. We have a task force that's met a couple times. I know we met recently last week, 2 weeks ago, related to this topic. There is thought that during the legislative session, that there could be changes to this law. There's only been a couple of districts that have moved forward with a plan. I think, was it Broward or?
St. John's.
And I think St. John's will
Palm
have to
Beach.
re-alter theirs because they're not in compliance for their middle school timeframe. They are for high school. So you can imagine this is going to be a very big discussion, and we're always strategic in what we do. If the legislative session ends in May, we're going to have all of the data and all of the thought process together prior to the legislative session. We're gonna see if the legislative session changes that prior to being more public with this whole idea, because we'll have to get people ready for that. A concern might be to get people ready too early, and then they would think that it's this coming August, which it is not. Let me repeat, it is not this August. It's the following August. But no matter how many times you say that, when you start to talk about it, they assume that it's this August. And then people go into a panic. So that's kind of where we stand on that. I know that we have transportation now re-examining the routes that they have to see how we can alter the timeframes to make it the best possible for all three groups of students, elementary, junior high, and high school. So that's kind of a brief update on that.
And there is no set limit on elementary school, correct?
No set limit.
Okay.
That's
And I
correct.
thought that's how Broward, they were just kind of swapping, I think it was Broward, but anyway,
The challenge would be, what time an elementary school would start,
right.
right? So it's a whole thing.
Moving
So
in its
So we don't have an idea of what the times would be?
we do.
Oh, we do?
We do. We started analyzing that through a task force. We're gonna wait for the legislature, see if the legislature's going to change that. And then at that point, we'll have public discussion related to this particular issue.
I just didn't know if you knew right now. Okay.
Okay, personnel consent agenda, okay? Nothing of significance there. Next, we have the complete salary schedule. By statute 1012.22, the board has to have a complete salary schedule, which means you take little bits of every document, and you put them into one document for the state. Let me commend the board. The board's done an awesome job when it comes to compensating our employees. Remember, we approved the CCA contract on September 17th. You approved the CESPA contract November 7th. Now, because those two contracts are done, we form one document incorporating all of that language. Included in there is the administrative salary increase of 2.3, which is $1,000 to the base. And in addition, the master's degree supplement related to that. So it's all on one document.
Is the ESE secretary changes in a salary schedule?
Okay, is that on the CESPA document?
That was the CESPA contract, the
CESPA
union did not agree to the ESE, and that contract was approved on a previous board.
So that's why it's not in there, so,
That's one that we can look at, or we can address if
because I thought,
we need to
yeah,
in an MOU process.
We did present it,
it was important to the board that people who had a lot more students. So it was presented, but I did not know that that was the outcome, because I looked through the whole salary schedule, many, many pages.
that was part of the CESPA contract, so it was back in the negotiations with the contract, which was approved at the previous board meeting.
Are we allowed to discuss why they decided not to accept that?
They wanted money elsewhere, they wanted people to have the minimum of 30 cents an hour instead of the quarter an hour.
Okay, on to the next one, which is an MOU between the district and the Clay County Fire Rescue, which this is one of the challenges is for our firefighter academy at Orange Park High School is finding a qualified instructor to teach that class. And so this agreement, when attached, is an agreement that we would have a current firefighter that would be employed by the fire department that would come over to Orange Park High School and teach those classes related to that. And we're almost ready to attach that. But this would be a good example of one that wouldn't be there before. So when I listen to the board's discussion, I think it's reasonable that the Thursday prior to the board meeting where voting is going to be attached, that is the goal, that all attachments would be there the Thursday prior, gives 1 week until that time. Any ones that are available 2 weeks ahead would have been already attached. And then there's the normal 48-hour one, which would be usually employee discipline that happens at the last minute. Next, we have elementary student out-of-state travel. That's pretty normal stuff. Next is the advertisement for the policies and procedures manual and the public hearing for February 25th. There's a changes sheet that's attached to it. Anytime we have a big document, we like to attach, hey, what's different about this one from the previous one? So I believe it's the third page in, has the changes to that related to the policies and procedures manual.
So I have a question.
Sure.
We're on C8, right? I'm having trouble, got the wrong glasses on today. So for C8, it's not really a question. I'm gonna request some documents of clarification. Part 2, policies and procedures. Yes, I did read the 133 pages twice, so I just have a couple. Policies and procedures for student with disabilities, procedures for placement in general education, the best practices in inclusion education assessment. I would like, if you share it with one, you have to share it with all. I would like to see the procedures for our inclusion practices across the spectrum. EBD, autism, etc. And I know that it said that there was an attachment for the BPIE, the best practices inclusion, but we couldn't see that. In addition, there was a section in the gifted. I would like to receive what, I guess, explanation as to what we mean when we say inclusions of more students into the gifted program. It's a new section, I think, in the changes that you made. There's a paragraph about that, and I think it's important that we see what that is and what that means. So the things I was looking at is our procedure placement for into general education. I was looking for the link or copies of the best practices in inclusion education assessment to see what we're using, because I think there was also documents of papers in there that you guys use, forms that people check off. I just want to see that section. And of the most current BPIE that was conducted on 5/10/2024. So there's 3 things, and explanations, I guess, or reasoning for the gifted section changes.
Okay. Sure. Okay, next we have academic services, out-of-state travel. And after that is the early college program between school district and St. John's River State College. AMI Kids, of course, they have a separate student calendar that's presented there. Next is our health service plans. You know, each year we have a partnership with the Department of Health for our clinics on our campus. Next is proposed allocation changes for 24-25. Very few there. One is double staffing for a routing specialist, particularly for ESE. This is a very, very challenging position, and the individual retiring is somebody with like 30 years of institutional knowledge related to that, so that's why that has occurred. Next is the...
So is that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through my papers here. On
Sure.
C13, when we deleted a 10-month ACE teacher adult education to add it back in as a 12-month.
Correct.
I know that Dr. Legucco's not here, but, so that's the same person where we changed the position from 10-month to a 12-month?
Right, because some of the activities occur over the summertime, And so it was extended from a 10-month to a 12-month position, which is 196.
Because it's almost $20,000 more, that's why I was asking.
And that is paid for through adult and community ed funds.
Okay,
Yeah. So generally, one of the considerations when you're talking about an allocation change is, of course, the need for it is the primary indicator or trigger related to that, but also a funding source
right.
becomes a thing where, for example, if you're gonna add a mental health individual, and the budget for mental health had went up from the legislature, then that would make sense that you have the flexibility to add that. So there's other factors under that. The fact that it's paid for out of adult community ed is one of those factors.
See, that's really helpful, because I remember I had asked Dr. Legucco, when you make changes such as that, if you attach the funding source, that's very helpful to see where those funds come from. Especially when it's, yeah.
See where it says school and department, is that
Yeah.
where the funding source
Adult
is?
community ed, that's not the funding source, no, it's under general funds.
That's just saying where
but
the
they-
It's general
allocation is
funds, yeah.
located.
They get a categorical for adult community ed.
And
So it went from
Are all
10 to
the-
12 because of summer work?
are all the teacher positions 12-month positions there? Because I know they do school year round, they do trimesters instead of semesters.
I would have to look, I don't believe they are though. Okay, next is monthly financial reports. Then followed by the budget amendment, the deletion of certain items, these are all very routine items. And then the two-way radio bid award to TJ Communications. Then there's the train contract for maintenance approval. Then there's the change order, you're gonna see a bunch of these for Clay High School for their parking lot renovation and redesign. The final completion of that, which is gorgeous, by the way. Then there's Fleming Island High School HVAC repair, their replacement contract. You can see operations is busy. The schematic preliminary final for Tynes Elementary fire alarm, Oakley Village fire alarm system, Plantation Oaks fire alarm system. So basically, all of Oakley's getting a lot of fire alarm replacement. Then you see Wilkinson Junior High Safety and Security Controlled Access. That's followed by the change order for Lakeside Elementary's kitchen renovation, Orange Park High School Media Center, substantial completion, you saw that, it's a beautiful facility, the pre-qualification of contractors, and the final completion at the end. So operations, certainly has been busy.
Has Wilkinson started, have you guys started their front office?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
You've like,
That is,
started-
that's the.
right, that's what I was wondering.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know if you actually like started gutting and doing all the things, okay?
And then that's it.
No questions from the audience? Okay. Superintendent comments?
No comments. I hope everybody has a safe trip down to Tampa and a good holiday. We do have one workshop prior to the holiday for the January meeting. That too will be very brief.
School board attorney comments?
No comments, I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving with their families, and welcome to the board, Mr. Caldera.
And school board member comments? We'll start with Mr. Alvera. Welcome aboard.
I have no comments right now,
Okay.
just getting the view and everything.
Ms. Hanson?
I have a couple of things that maybe you could jot it down for me, Mr. Broski. I was wondering if you could get me the dollar amount for annual fees to Purvis and Gray. And I forgot to add, when we're working on these ESE documents, I have not seen the Neola policies with exceptional student education. Are we melded together? Because, I mean.
Yes, one of the things that we're in the process of doing through many meetings with Neola is making sure that our current information is going to coordinate with the Neola policy. So that is part of what's happening right now.
because it's hard to, the document, you know, is 130-some pages and it's real thin. When you print it out, very tiny letters, I couldn't tell if it was, if we had gone through matching with policy, make sure it's all the same at that time. That's why it looked like that, maybe?
Yeah, that's the work that's being done now. So you gotta remember, even like the code of conduct, there would be policy that would be spread out among many policies, but all refer back to the information that's in the code of conduct. So ensuring that those two things are congruent is the process that's going on now.
And I guess the last thing is I'm going to request a link to get in to see our policies that we're working on, or a copy of the student policies, because I did ask 2 months ago, and I think that's a reasonable amount of time that's gone by. You and I have talked about it a couple of times, so if you can get me a link just to look at the policies, if you give it to me, give it to everyone, maybe we only had a student code of conduct prior to this, although our policies were in the code of conduct. This is much different for us, and I think it's 83 separate student policies. So, like I said, I mean, it's been a couple months. I would like to spend some time in there because there's some things of particular interest to me, and I need to see what we're working on.
So, I mean, the good news is you're gonna get the policy in plenty of time, I think.
Actually, we are done with with 3 whole sections, the HR section. And so the admin, the instructional and support. And so the way it works with Neola is they have to start there because that's like the foundation, everything attaches. So those have been the ones that, by their recommendation, that's the way they do it with all the districts. You start with the 1s, the 3s, and the 4s. And in fact, Brenda is wearing her her ribbon because they finished.
We're the winner.
What was it, 200 policies?
We're the
and
winners.
yeah, they're the winners. And so those will be coming to, you will get those, I would say, right now they are getting them prepared to be printed and provided to you all. They may have it by late December, but we know the holidays, it's a little iffy. Certainly by January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, they will have that. And so they will be here January, I wanna say it's 28th, I think that's our board workshop, to go through those policies. And so at that point, you will have about 3 to 4 weeks with the 1s, the 3s, and the 4s.
I'm
So
just
those are
asking
the
to
ones
look
that we
through 'em.
have done.
I just want I just want to see the Neola policies.
Is there not a way
I
to
don't
just
need the
have
change
access?
policy. I don't want to look at Duval's policies. I want to look at.
No, this is the ones that we have, these
Right,
are
I
the
just wanna
first
look at
ones
the
that
way
we have
you can print them
done.
out in Neola, like just click print, the student section.
She just wants to be able to see Neola's policy, and I know you can go to other districts, but they've
Yeah.
changed it and amended it to fit their district.
Mm-hmm.
So since we are paying a good amount, is there either a way that if they don't wanna give us a login, could she meet with, our rep for them, and they sit down and print out the policies for her, to let her view them, so that she can have them ahead of time? I mean, I don't think that that's unreasonable. If
They
Yeah,
said that
let
we
me-
had
let me
access to policies
see.
when we hired them.
they
so.
did
Yep.
say that.
Yeah, so let me talk to them, and I will talk to Annette.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that this is a company that does this for a living. We hired
Yeah.
experts for a reason, and so,
Well, and I'm not saying to like, for people to jump around or for her to bring them ahead of time or anything like that. I just know I like certain things a certain way, and if Miss Hanson's a planner and she has to sit there with papers all over her bedroom floor, or whatever she's gotta do for months on end, whatever, I just wanna be able, since we are paying for it, and if that's the tools that she needs to be a successful board member, let's provide it.
yeah, we do.
So let's ask
Plenty
the,
of time ahead.
Yep.
anything else?
And I just want to tell you, I had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I had to have it on a Friday because my daughter couldn't make it till that day. But we found my mom a place to live. And after her home was ruined in the hurricane, she's in much better spirits now. The whole family has been lifted and God is good. And that's it.
Ms. Gilligan?
Nothing for me.
Ms. Clark? I just wanted to say that I've did a couple of visits, and I've also spoken passing to, a couple people about our new PA systems that we're installing, I forget what they're actually called.
The audio enhancement.
The audio enhancement, yep, there you go. There's a lot of excitement with it because there's a lot of customizations that they can have, with it, and so an overwhelming amount actually like it. There are, your select few teachers that are like, I have to wear this thing, like, what do we do? Like, I've had some complaints, but I just wanted to let you know the feedback that I was getting, that some people are super excited. I know they're working out some kinks at some of the schools, but from what I'm hearing, it was mixed reviews at first, but now I think that it's all coming together, so it's getting a little bit better. And then I guess we have to talk to legal about this on where we're at and whatnot, but I don't know if we can go ahead as a board, be thinking and picking who we're gonna have as the board member for the audit committee. At what point do we do that? I know we're in the,
You're listed as the auditor review meeting on that.
right, okay, so my question on that is, Miss Honora, is that going to be the actual internal audit committee? That one? I thought this was something
I
different.
think that's something we had all along.
Right.
The other audits.
Right, so what I'm talking about is the internal audit committee.
Okay.
Do we, how you were gonna have, we were gonna have a board member, and then we were going to have other district staff, and then you guys, where are we at actually on that? Have you pushed it, I know you're gonna push out to
So
the chamber and.
we pushed it out to the chamber. We have 2 applications on file so far. Made a dozen or so cold calls to people. I'll be working the phones on the way to Tampa this afternoon in order to attract people to it. It's usually people that are just civic minded, that want to be involved, that have financial background that we're looking for. So we're still recruiting for that committee.
Can we
So-
send you suggestions
Yeah,
of people?
send me names and phone
Mhm.
numbers, that'd be great. I'll give them a call.
Can do.
So we as a board, can we go ahead and pick our person, or is it, like, maybe think about it and then come and have it picked in January? Is that okay from?
Yeah, you can,
It's up to the board on that. You just have one member that you nominate for it, so by board consensus or vote, perfectly
Maybe the
okay.
next
So if you wanna
workshop.
start thinking about it now and come back in January, that's fine, or if you
Yeah.
wanna take care of
Okay,
it now.
the only reason I bring it up is because we just did our committees and our committee assignments, and I wanna make sure that that's not something that is being held back. I know it takes 5 minutes, we can do it, but I just wanted to make sure that it was on our radar as a board, and maybe next board workshop, we get a consensus on who we want on it.
We
And
talked
then-
about the 2 applications. I know Duval has a whole board of people that do the same thing we're trying to do. I don't know how they got so many people on theirs. Did they send them to different places maybe, or did the board members find people? Like, how do we get more applications, I guess is?
You're in the process of doing that. We're gonna send a letter out to all CPA firms,
Okay.
and then we'll also call them up and follow up. First, starting with the chamber first, because that would
Okay.
seem like a natural connection. When you're asking somebody to be civic-minded and give up their time to do that in their career and their profession, sometimes having a personal connection through the chamber or whatever is an easier way to recruit people than just somebody that's totally cold coming in.
And
Okay.
just to refresh my mind, for the board member designees, they also need a background in finance, correct?
No,
No.
No, that can just be anybody.
anybody.
Okay.
And if that's it, this meeting's adjourned.